Good afternoon, boys and girls. It is 1 o'clock. Actually, it's 1:02. According to my computer, I guess I'm a little bit late, but not too bad today. Trying to get my kids all finished with their work. As he's finished, I think Dylan has a Zoom call for first grade. And I think for the most part, a lot of you are finished. I would say 3/4 of you are finished your work today, which is awesome. Looks like most of you were able to give me a book report using a Google slide, and I looked over some of them. Just remember, for titles of your books, capitalize your titles. You should have learned that today during your Nearpod capitalization lesson. Also, when it says author, give me the author, fiction or nonfiction. So you should know the difference between fiction and nonfiction at this point in your third grade career. Remember, fiction is a story that's made up with characters and setting and plot and problem and solution and resolution and ending of the story. And then nonfiction is a story that is real. So when you get to plot under that Google slide box, if you're reading a fiction book, you want to have important events that happen in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Beginning, or the rising, and then the climax, which is the most action, and then the falling action, and then the resolution at the end. So I'm going to post a video tomorrow with your Google slide explaining the plots of the story. And I think I really want you to focus on, because some of you only give me like one sentence, and that's not really what I want for that plot section. I want you to kind of give me the important events that happen in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. So include the characters and the setting and what they want. It's kind of almost like a summary, which you guys have been doing, but you're sticking that in that plot section, okay? If it's a nonfiction book, then give me the main idea and the supporting details of your book. What is your book about? And then give me some supporting details. And then rate your book. Kind of slide those stars over and then tell me if you like the book or not and who would like that book, who would like to read that book. Mr. Popper's Penguins, I'm enjoying that book a lot, very well. I really didn't know if I was going to like it or not. I've seen the movie, but I didn't know the book is totally different from the movie, by the way. And I wasn't sure I was going to like it, but actually I'm really into it. So people that would like this book would be people that are interested in adventure and interested in penguins, and kind of someone who likes to read a story that's is a little far-fetched, but it's kind of like a realistic fiction book. I guess you could have a penguin for a pet, but you'd obviously have to modify your house, and I don't know if that would really work in the perfect world, because you want to have pets that are in their natural habitat, places where they naturally live and thrive. So I'm not really sure realistically if that would be something that we could do or not. So hopefully most of you did the book report slide correctly. Your Nearpod lesson on capitalization, it seems like some of you enjoyed that, and that was a good lesson to provide to you, because I am noticing still that we still need some work on our capitalization rules. And then iReady, don't forget to do your iReady path for 15 minutes. And that's kind of all you had today. So I went kind of late a little bit. Tomorrow we're going to get back to our research writing, and we're going to do a Nearpod lesson on commas, because I think that's another grammar skill that we need to work on. So over the last few weeks, I kind of thought about what skills and standards we really need to focus on before the end of third grade, and those were a couple of them. So we're going to have some quick grammar lessons this week on capitalization and commas. And we're also going to do some research writing, and also main idea. We're going to get back to, if we don't focus on it towards the end of this week, we'll probably pick up on main idea when you come back to school. April 20th is the day after our spring break. So, or when we come back from spring break. So April 20th is that day. All right, so let's get to chapter 12, and it's called More Mouths to Feed. So if you can remember from chapter 11, Greta came to visit Captain Cook and Mr. Popper. So she's the new penguin in town, and she was also a sad penguin, and Captain Cook was a sad penguin. and now they both live together, and now they seem to be happy together. So um, the next chapter is called More Mouths to Feed, and we tried to make a prediction at the end of chapter 11 to see what would chapter 12 be about. And my prediction was that more mouths to feed. So Greta and Captain Cook, obviously you're going to have to take care of 2 penguins now. So not only that, but maybe they have more than Captain Cook and Greta to feed. Maybe they have a couple more penguins that show up. So that was my prediction. Maybe they're going to have penguin babies. I don't know. Macy I said that her cat might be having kittens soon, so she's going to have more mouths to feed too. All right, so let's read our chapter 12. So the next day, Mr. Popper called an engineer and had a large freezing plant installed in the cellar, and took Captain Cook and Greta down there to live. Then he had the furnace taken out and moved upstairs into the living room. It looked very odd there, but as Mrs. Popper said, it was a relief at least not to have to wear their overcoats all the time. Mr. Popper was quite worried when he found out that all these changes were going to be very expensive. The refrigerator engineer was worried too when he found out that Mr. Popper had practically no money. However, Mr. Popper promised to pay as soon as he could, and the man let him have everything on credit. It was a good thing that Mr. Popper got the penguins moved when he did, because Mrs. Popper had been right about the eggs. The rookery had scarcely been moved to the basement when Greta laid the first egg. 3 days later, the second one appeared. So I was right, babies. Since Mr. Popper knew that penguins lay only 2 eggs a season, he was astonished when a little later the third egg was found under Greta. Whether the change in climate had changed the penguins' breeding habits, Mr. Popper never knew. But every third day, a new one would appear until there were 10 in all. Oh my goodness. Now, penguin eggs are so large that the mother can sit on only 2 at a time, and this created quite a problem. Mr. Popper solved it, however, by distributing the eggs under hot water bottles and electric heating pads, kept just at penguin body heat. The penguin chicks, when they began to hatch, were not so handsomely marked as their mother and father. They were fuzzy, droll little creatures who grew at a tremendous rate. Captain Cook and Greta were kept busy bringing food to them, though of course the Poppers all helped too. Mr. Popper, who had always been such a great reader, had no difficulty in thinking of names for the penguin children. They were Nelson, Columbus, Louisa, Jenny, Scott, Magellan, Adelina, Isabella, Ferdinand, and Victoria. Still, he was rather relieved that there were no more than 10 to name. Hey, Izzy, you got named a penguin. Mrs. Popper, too, thought that this was about enough penguins for anybody, though they really did not make much difference to her in her housework. As long as Mr. Popper and the children remembered to close the cellar door in the kitchen. The penguins all loved to climb the stairs that led up to the kitchen, and never knew when to stop unless they found the kitchen door closed. Then, of course, they would turn around and toboggan down the steps again. This made rather a curious noise sometimes when Mrs. Popper was working in the kitchen, but she got used to it, as she had got used to so many other strange things this winter. Did you remember that one of the 10 baby penguins was named Isabella? So now I can call you a penguin. Yes. The freezing plant that Mr. Popper had got for the penguins downstairs was a large and good one. It made very large blocks of ice instead of small ice cubes, so that soon Mr. Popper had made such a sort of ice castle down there for the 12 penguins to live and climb over. Mr. Popper also dug a large hole in the cellar floor and made a swimming and diving pool for the birds. From time to time, he would throw live fish into the pool for the penguins to dive for. They found this very refreshing because, to tell you the truth, they had got a little tired of canned shrimps. The live fish were especially ordered and were brought all the way from the coast in tank cars and glass boxes to 432 Proudfoot Avenue. Unfortunately, they were quite expensive. It was nice that there were so many penguins because when 2 of them, usually Nelson and Columbus, got into a fight and began to spar at each other with their flippers, the 10 other penguins would all crowd around to watch the fight and make encouraging remarks. This made a very interesting little scene. Mr. Popper also flooded a part of the cellar floor for an ice rink. and here the penguins often drilled like a sort of small army in fantastic marching movements and parades around the ice. The penguin, Louisa, seemed especially fond of leading these marching drills. It was quite a sight to see them after Mr. Popper had the idea of training Louisa to hold a small American flag in her beak while she proudly led the solemn parades. Janie and Bill would often bring their little friends home from school with them, and they would go all down and watch the penguins for hours. At night, instead of sitting and reading and smoking his pipe in the living room as he had done before, Mr. Popper would put on his overcoat, and take his things downstairs. There he would sit and read, with his mittens on, looking up from time to time to see what his pets were doing. He often thought about the cold, distant regions in which the little creatures really belonged. Often, too, he thought of how different his life had been before the penguins had come to keep him occupied. It was January now, and already he dreaded to think of the time when spring would come and he would have to leave them all day and go back to painting houses. And then chapter 13 is called Money Worries. So that was a question, good readers ask questions as you're reading. And then as I was reading that, I was like thinking about all the things that Mr. Popper is doing for the basement, making an ice rink and a pond and getting all this food and fish. And that has to be expensive. He's not working right now. He's a painter and he doesn't work until the spring. And he must be racking up some big bills on his credit cards. And as you can see, the next chapter, chapter 13, Money Worries, most likely that chapter is all going to be about, if I had to make a prediction, about how he's going to pay for all these things that he's doing for these penguins. It started off with one penguin. Now he's got 12 penguins to care for, all in his basement. So that's going to cause him some problems, I'm thinking. So we'll look forward tomorrow to read about his money problems and see what he does about his money problems. If I was to summarize that chapter or, write kind of where it says on the book report slide plots, I would say the chapter began when Mr. and Mrs. Popper started to look at Greta's eggs. They rearranged the basement to make it more penguin-like the Antarctic. Then the eggs hatched, and instead of having 2 or 3 eggs and 3 babies, they wound up having 10 young penguins in their basement. Mr. Popper redid the basement and made an ice rink and a pond. And then towards the end, I would say something like in the end of the chapter, Mr. Popper began to worry about how he's going to pay for all of these things and to take care of 12 different penguins. And I think at the end of the chapter, it said that he's starting to worry or wonder what it would be like if these penguins were all back at their habitat at the South Pole in Antarctic. So, maybe down the road, maybe he decides that this isn't going to work out and he returns them to the South Pole. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to happen for the rest of the story. But that's possibly something that maybe he decides that although this was a good idea at first, maybe he needs to get all of these penguins back to their original habitat so they can be happy and live. Maybe they move to the South Pole. Maybe they move to Antarctica. I don't know. Remember what we already know about Antarctica. For those of you in my homeroom that have had oceans and continents, we said that Antarctica is the only continent that does not have a yearly population of people that live there. So mainly because it is such a harsh, cold, windy environment. Although I did read a few weeks ago, I think I told you guys this actually while I was at school, that Antarctica was abnormally warm. It was around 60 degrees, which is way too warm, northern part of Antarctica. But usually all 12 months is really cold and windy and snowy. And usually you only see scientists there and not people that live there. Alrighty. Get outside. It looks beautiful. I am going to eat lunch and go out. It doesn't look like it's windy at all. It looks like it's a perfect day to get out, get your work done. And tomorrow, just to give you a preview of tomorrow's lessons, we're going to do your iReady Path, and then you're going to read a book, epic, an online novel or a book from home. You're going to fill out again your Google slide book report. And then we're going to have a Nearpod lesson on commas. And I'm going to have you start your next paragraph of writing. No social studies tomorrow because it's library day. Wednesday is going to be your makeup day. And then Thursday, that's why I gave you the writing lesson tomorrow, because I figure if you don't have enough time to do it tomorrow, because it's going to be nice tomorrow as well, then maybe you can do it a little bit on Wednesday. Thursday is a half a day. So I have a Kahoot scheduled for Thursday for you on capitalization. And for social studies, you're going to take a virtual field trip to the tundra. So we're going to focus on landforms found at the tundra. It's a virtual field trip where you're actually going to watch a video of scientists going to the tundra and looking for polar bears. And it's actually a really cool little video. So that's what I have planned for your assignments for Thursday for your half a day. All right. I hope you guys have a great day. I haven't had too many questions today. I guess that's a good thing. I guess most of you, I think Abe was the only one who had some trouble trying to type in where the author is, but the rest of the boxes worked. But I think for the most part, everybody is good with their lessons today. Make sure you do your social studies lessons on bodies of water as well for Mrs. Colonna's class. And make sure you go to your math and science lessons, my homeroom, to make sure you complete that. And your special. Don't forget your specials as well. All right, guys, have a great day. And I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8:30 for our morning meeting. Bye.